Well, welcome everybody. I'm going to get rolling here so that we don't waste time on the formalities of introductions. These introductions could be really long because these guys, well, they've been around a little while. But what I'd like to do is introduce you to the two representatives of the House Democratic Caucus that are with us today. We have Representative Pat Sullivan to my far left. Pat was the first mayor of Covington, and he is also on the Economic Development Council, Kent School Board, and was co-president of the Covington Elementary PTA. He currently is majority leader in the House, and he also serves on the House Appropriations Committee. Pat's legislative priorities are to have public education fully funded. He's looking for common sense transportation investments and ways to build a strong economy. And in a moment, we'll ask, I think, Pat to go first, but please help me welcome Pat Sullivan right now. Secondly, I'd like to introduce Representative Larry Springer. Yeah. Well, there's some discrepancy about who he is and where he's from today, but actually, Larry is from the 45th District in Kirkland. He's a small business owner, and it's a business most of us want to visit because it's a wine store. And but he got involved in local politics a long time ago, and served as the Kirkland mayor, first Kirkland mayor, I believe. So he's been on the city council there. He is really interested in doing things to revitalize his community, to not just make it a place to live, but to make it a place to live well, and I really appreciate that perspective. So with that, please help me welcome Representative Larry Springer. Oh, you are. And Larry's going to start us off, and then Pat will follow.
All right, thanks, Dan, and appreciate the opportunity to come and see all of you that I see periodically during session. I was a little troubled because there was some discrepancy here. I didn't think anybody here knew who I was or what I was, because I'm listed here twice. Representative Larry Springer, Democrat of Seattle. That's not a friendly thing to say to me. Then later on, I'm listed as Larry Springer, Republican Yelm. I don't know what you thought was going to happen between today and February 14th, but Pat's going to talk to you a little bit about our budget reality, but what I want to set the stage for is just to indicate some of the major themes and major issues that are facing the legislature this year that we came down here that were sort of top of mind, things that we have got to come to grips with. And they are things such as that you've all heard about. We have a mental health crisis in this state. Not only indicated to us by the Supreme Court, but by what's going on at Western State, has created something that just cannot be ignored. We have an opioid crisis that cannot be ignored. We have a housing affordability crisis in locations not just in the Puget Sound Basin, but Chelan County faces it, the Tri-Cities faces it, Vancouver faces it. We've got to do something about housing affordability, not to mention the homelessness issue. We have not adequately funded our special ed programs in our K-12 system. And we've got a very emotional topic out there that is iconic to the state of Washington, and that's the South Puget Sound resident orcas and the real threat they face to extinction. So those are some very big topics that we have got to come to grips with. That's all done in the context of writing a budget for this year. Pat's one of our major budget writers, so I'm going to turn it over to Pat and let him give you a reality check on what our budget actually looks like.
Well, thanks, Larry, and I'm going to be pretty brief. I always like these occasions where you have a chance to ask questions. It's more interesting than just hearing us speak, but I've had a number of people come to me and say, you know, the state has $4.2 billion more. What's the problem? And so you have a handout here that explains what the problem is. On the left is revenue that's projected through this next biennium. The 1921 biennium shows the 4.2% growth. But then when you look to the right on the expenditure side, what you see is a carry forward maintenance level budget. So no new investments in mental health and in orcas, in any of those things. It's simply taking the current budget, moving it forward. And the biggest piece of that is that, remember that McCleary issue that's gone now? Well, it's going to show up for a long time because the $4.2 billion, as you can see to the right, eats up all of the new revenue growth. The bill that we passed 2 years ago was a significant bill, but I guess apparently it costs money to educate our school kids, and it shows up here. And then when you go down the list, you can see where the maintenance level costs and the carry forward level costs are in each of the functional areas. This was a presentation that was done by our nonpartisan staff, so it wasn't tainted with Democratic caucus perspective. It was presented to us in early January to kind of set the tone and set the stage of where we are. And so I hearken back the very first budget that I became involved in. At the time I was vice chair of Ways and Means. Was the first year that the recession hit, and some pretty depressing budgets. And I can tell you, coming into this session, with the outlook that we have is pretty depressing as well. I've had this black cloud in my room because everybody who came in and said, well, we're in the governor's budget. Well, I just want to remind everyone that the governor's budget raised $10 billion, $9 billion for the operating side, $1 billion for transportation for culverts. That's a significant amount of revenue, and I'm guessing that $9 billion might be kind of hard for the legislature to pass. And so we're going to be very selective in how we move forward. But this is going to be a very tough session. It really does harken back to those budgets where we struggled to try to balance. And we want to work with you in trying to find solutions to carry forward this next session, and look forward to working through these difficult times and finding a way to ensure that we keep the state moving forward in a positive direction. So thank you very much for inviting us here today, and we're happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Larry and Pat. Really appreciate your comments. It's now my pleasure to introduce Senator Rebecca Saldaña from Seattle, from the 37th District. Previous to her service in the legislature, she was executive director of a nonprofit that helped secure $16 million in city funding for equitable development initiatives, the Graham Street light rail station, and low-income transit fare programs. She is majority deputy leader in the Senate, and the issues of high import to her include worker and immigrant advocacy, transit equity, women's rights, social and racial justice, civic engagement, affordable housing, and sustainable community development. And that keeps anybody busy for a long time, I'm sure. Please help me welcome Senator Rebecca Saldaña.
So I'm glad the budget guys are here, because I think in thinking of having the opportunity and the privilege to be before you today, and this is my first time to be here since it's been remodeled, is I had really kind of set a few, because I am kind of the person that likes to think big. And as you know, for some of you that I've had a chance to meet with you, I really try to come in to this work and to this role as a legislator, as an advocate for the interests of working families, for, as was said, the refugees, immigrants, and really what I see as improving historically undervalued women's work that is becoming more and more central to the services in our service-based economy. And so I am really trying to figure out, like, how do we wrestle so that every year we're not in the same place of having to face a really tough decisions about whether we're actually going to make investments around housing, whether we're actually going to be able to provide the kind of health care security that so many folks depend upon, particularly our seniors. And how do we make sure that we are creating innovation, creating a whole future of new business owners, entrepreneurs, and workers that are going to build the future that's going to be cleaner, that's going to be healthy, that's going to be able to allow our generations from now to be able to look out the windows and see this beautiful clear sky, to see our mountains and be able to enjoy the quality of life that brought all of us to Washington State. Because just looking here, I think a lot of us, whether we're first generation or multi-generation, came from somewhere else to be able to be here in Washington because it meant prosperity for us. So I'm just going to do a little, so that's part of it, but I'll make sure that I actually have time for questions. So, I mean, I think the main thing is that I am about how do we work together as business, as community, as workers, to be able to make sure that we're creating more health and prosperity for you. Because what we know is that when we do that, we have more productivity. We have more success. And paying fair wages is just one piece of that. Because what we know right now is that even though we have high wages here in Washington State, that's getting eaten by other financial pressures, whether that's college debt, whether that's healthcare, whether it's rising rents. And so I think those are the things that we're trying to tackle together to make sure that you have a workforce that is ready to work when they're coming to work for you. And so that's where I really do appreciate the engagement around thinking about what is a statewide secure scheduling or portable benefits, because I see those as tools that can help increase our financial stability for working families and for businesses so that they have more agency and flexibility. And we know that those programs are ones that require many, many more discussions with folks here at this table. But I also know that we can build upon what we've already done together, which was to pass a paid leave and medical leave policy that is portable, that is something that people can build into even if they end up in many different jobs over a lifetime. We also know that lots of work has been done around looking at how we address people's retirement and being able to pay for long-term care. And I do think that there is some momentum in that space. And again, want to engage with you to see how we make it all the way through. And I'm looking at Bob because Bob has been the gracious one that often comes and represents you with me. And I really do appreciate the openness and the frankness that he brings to do advocacy and make sure that your interests are being represented. And so may we consider looking at that this year. We also know, excuse me, I'm nervous. And so I think that other piece is around housing. And I do think around the condo liability work that has been done, that we have another place where we can make some major progress and build upon the work that the landlords and the tenants did last year around income discrimination to see what's the next step that we can make around continuing to improve the protections for tenants and also to be able to free up some of what we need to do to be able to put more housing into the field as quickly as possible. So just see if there's anything else. But I think in terms, those are, how we are going to work around housing this year, how already we're talking about the investments we need to do around medical and opioid treatments and behavioral health. These are things that we need you, because as I was looking at some of the things that are posted here from having people here last week, is that you have innovators working around issues of immigration and making it easier for folks. You have healthcare innovators that are also looking at how to make it easier for people to access health, whether that's through telemedicine or whether that's through investing in different types of clinics that are connected into their communities. So I think these are the things where businesses' best ideas need to be at the table, helping us see how can we do and deliver these services more affordably, because we are accountable to our taxpayers. And if we are going to have to look at this budget that's before us and think about what is it that we're going to do less with, or how can we actually come together and actually move forward something that right-sides how we do our revenue, so that we have some more flexibility to be able to deliver for Washingtonians. So I just want to thank you for taking the time and for inviting me, and I very much look forward to many opportunities this year in the session and years to come to be able to find ways that we can continue to improve life for Washingtonians. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, as we move into the question and answer period, so our panelists don't have to be popping up and popping down, I'm going to just pass the microphone to them and allow them to answer from the sitting position, if that's all right. Who has a question right off the bat here?